I'm standing in a sweet corn, a block of sweet corn planted on a research station in Bowen. Fall armyworm has certainly made its presence felt here in the dry tropics during this season. Predominantly sweet corn and maize crops have been affected quite severely, but we have seen some on grain sorghum crops. And this week I've also seen the first sign of second instar larvae feeding on some soybean crops. I'm just going to take you through this particular block here. It was sown 4.5 weeks ago. We had fall armyworm egg masses laid on the very first leaf to emerge from the ground. We had a peak of between 2 and 3 egg masses per plant at the 3 leaf stage, and we're now at the 6 to 7 leaf stage. Thankfully the insect activity has dropped back a little bit. There's quite a bit of damage through here despite 3 sprays being applied to date and another one due to go on tomorrow. I'm just going to walk into the crop and just hopefully the camera picks it up okay. But there's a fall armyworm egg mass. Generally, the egg masses that we've been seeing have been laid on the upper side of most leaves, but they can be all over the plant and on the underside of the leaf as well. When they're first laid, the egg mass is quite distinctly white, but as you can see here, there's a colour change, and these eggs, as they're starting to develop, are moving into a pinky tan colour, and then eventually you'll see the head capsule of the larvae as they're getting ready to emerge. As I said, we had a peak of about 2 to 3 egg masses per plant through here early on. Hopefully you can see here the characteristic windowing that occurs when the larvae hatch and move out. You know, there's between 100 and 200 eggs laid in an egg mass, and the larvae will just disperse throughout the plant, feed on the foliage, and then very quickly move down into the whorl of the plant, where they like the protection that's afforded down there. And this is the sort of devastation that we're seeing already in this particular crop here. So these plants here had some of those egg masses very early on. Despite the sprays, some of the larvae managed to escape and get down into the whorl before feeding on any treated foliage, and there is a significant amount of damage to these plants, such that some of those, the tassel, when it comes out, may not even produce any pollen, and this plant's already been damaged to the point where the yield will be severely affected. And just quickly, I suspect if we pull this out here, we may see larva feeding in the leaf tissue. That's probably a fourth instar fall armyworm larva that will just continue to feed in the whorl of the plant before emerging and pupating in the soil. Just in relation to monitoring, it's very important, particularly in the early stages when the plant is developing quite rapidly and the leaf tissue is expanding, to get the timing of insecticide sprays right. And I'd suggest that for those that are monitoring, you really need to detect the egg mass, tag them, and go back and look at how long it's taking for those egg masses to hatch. During winter, it was sort of taking 4 to 5 days, but as the weather's warming up now, we're getting emergence in 3 days. I suspect during the summer months, it might even be 2. And what we're aiming for, I don't know how well this is going to be seen, what we're aiming for is to basically have the insecticide or the BT on the leaf surface around where those larvae are going to take their first bite of that foliage. And this timing was perfect. You can see that as these larvae have emerged, there's no evidence of any feeding around there. They've basically consumed their eggshell, and as they've come out, they've died very quickly. If the egg mass is laid on some younger leaves that are expanding and the insecticide is applied too early, there'll be areas that aren't treated that will enable the larvae to feed and then gradually move down into the whorl where they're protected from any sprays. Just wanted to show this as well. This egg mass was actually laid on the underside of the leaf. But again, if you flip that over, you can see that the larvae, when they've hatched, have actually fed on the leaf tissue. But the product that we used, which was Success Neo, is translaminar. And when they have fed on the leaf tissue that was treated on the upper surface, they've got a dose. And again, there's been no feeding whatsoever, and all of the larvae that have hatched from that egg mass have died. I'll just go back and we'll have a look at some cobs. As the sweetcorn plant develops, it gets a lot harder to find the egg masses, so it takes quite a while, but it is important that again that they're detected and the timing of those sprays are right. I'm just going to open up a couple of these cobs and see if we've got some larvae in the cobs. There we go. There is probably a third to fourth instar that's just starting to make its way down to the tip of the cob. And there's one. Might have moved on, but that's the sort of damage that we're seeing, and worse once those larvae move into the tip of the cob. And just briefly, Brian alluded to the traps for monitoring purposes. They're trapping the male moths, so they're a useful indicator of activity in the district. When we were getting 2 to 3 egg masses per plant, we were averaging between 50 and 20 per day. These are the traps, which come apart like so. The pheromone, which is sent in these packets, and it's very important to wear gloves. It's also very important when you're touching the pheromone that you don't get it on the outside of the trap or anything around there. Otherwise, it's sort of defeating the purpose. That's what the pheromone looks like. And you just put it inside there, put it back in the top of the trap. And the other part is the insecticide cube. I won't touch these. You should not only have gloves, but you should be wearing glasses and probably a respirator when you're working with these as well. But one of these cubes gets added to the bottom so that when the moths go in, they're killed. And you then just put the trap back together, hang it off a tree or a star picket, and collect the moths at a regular interval. We've been doing it weekly, but if you're collecting a large number of moths, it's often useful to do it more regularly so you're not getting huge numbers building up inside. I'd also recommend not putting it near hydrants, because often there's frogs there, and we've seen frogs get into the top of the trap chasing the moths, but the dichlorvos in the insecticide cube will kill them as well. So try and avoid putting it near a hydrant. But that's a bit of an overview of what's been happening in the field, and happy to field any questions if there's any from the viewers. Thanks.